Tom Murphy is the Arkansas beat writer for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, and way back in the day, time flies when you're having fun, I guess, he was the beat writer for the Alabama Crimson Tide. How long has that been, Tom, since you were on the Alabama beat?
Well, I covered saving tiring at Alabama. It's a crazy drive from the airport over to the athletic facilities, and it is first spring and first 2 days of fall camp.
So
2007 before I came here.
So you were one of the first people that Saban ran off. He got rid of you in a hurry. Just kidding, of course. Hey, Tom, let's just jump right into this Alabama-Arkansas game, and let's start from the Arkansas perspective. It's been a good season. The one negative in the A&M game, a game that Arkansas was right there, and certainly some missed opportunities, a fumble going into the end zone, another time getting stopped there, and that was really what turned the game around. I know Arkansas, that's football in the SEC, but Arkansas probably looks at that game and says, that's a game we could have won and we could be unbeaten. But still, a good year so far for Arkansas. And what's the feeling up there in Fayetteville in regards to this particular team? Is it still a team that the fans and players think have a shot to get to Atlanta?
Well, in summary, they had just so many new faces on offense, including quarterback Austin Allen. None of the offensive linemen were playing the same spots that they had played the previous year. 3 of them were new starters. And then new backs in place of, Alex Collins. So, they squeaked by Louisiana Tech by 1 point in a game that, they needed a fourth quarter drive to go take the lead in that one, and then played the game at the tempo they wanted against TCU, and it was 20-7 early in the fourth quarter. Had a field goal try that would have made it 23-7, but it turned crazy after that, and they wound up winning it in overtime. But what we've seen is Austin Allen is a real gamer at quarterback. If your listeners watched any of the Texas A&M game, he took a bunch of shots in that game and stayed in the game and still delivered passes. He's an accurate passer. I think he's still leading the SEC in completion percentage. He's way up there in quarterback efficiency rating. So they like what he's doing. Got some concerns with the run game right now. The A&M game, they had 2 goal line stands against them. And one of the 2 goal line stands was 2 sets of downs because there was a holding call in the end zone. So A&M held them out like 5 plays inside the 2 on that one, and then, of course, 4 plays on the other drive. And then Raleigh Williams also had a fumble on the 1, standing up, going in. So they left a lot of points on the board against A&M. When they play the way they like and they get 3rd and shorts and things like that, they control the tempo of the game. They're a really good team. The TCU game got kind of crazy in the fourth quarter, and so did the A&M game. So those to me were reflective of what happened in the fourth quarter of the game in Tuscaloosa last year when, Arkansas was up 7-3 at the half, and they got the big touchdown to Ridley in the third quarter. So I think it was 10-7 still going in the third quarter, and then Bama had things go its way in that final period.
Yeah, one thing you can say about Arkansas football under Brett Bielema is it's exciting. It seems like the losses are exciting. The wins are exciting. No game is truly over until it's over. We saw that with Ole Miss last year. It's a fun brand of football, and the guy's a fun guy. He's got to be a great guy to cover. More on him in a moment. I want to get back, though, to Austin Allen, obviously the younger brother of the former starter, Brandon Allen. I had heard Bielema last year describe him as being different types of quarterbacks, but do you think anybody foresaw Austin Allen stepping in and playing as well as he has this year for Arkansas?
I think some people who were really close to him felt like that was a more likely possibility than just being kind of average. We all kind of wondered, okay, you got the 2013 Brandon Allen, the 14 Brandon Allen, the 15. Which one of the Austin Allen are we going to get? Well, it looks to me like we got pretty early 2015, the senior Brandon Allen. Even though he had a couple of games that they could have won, Toledo and A&M game that were, a little more accurate passing, they might win those games. So he's just a cool customer. He's fiery. Brandon Allen pretty stoic. Only a few times on the sideline we just see him kind of get fired up. But Austin has done that. He did it in the A&M game. He does it on the sideline. I mean, he's just a little bit more of a fiery, more hotly competitive guy than his brother. And I've been pretty impressed. He, like I say, completion percentage and the calm under fire. I mean, they had to go 2-minute drill against TCU after they gave up the lead and were down 8. and they went down there. I think it was 4 plays, beautiful touchdown pass delivery to Keon Hatcher to close it out, and then he caught the 2-point conversion. So his career is off to a pretty impressive start.
Let's talk about this matchup between Alabama and Arkansas. And you go back, nobody has to tell you that Saban's 9-0 at Alabama against Arkansas, going back to Petrino. Of course, the debacle with John L. Smith. Bielema's first year was ugly. But this Arkansas team 2 years ago, you could say could have, and from an Arkansas perspective, I'm sure you would say should have beaten Alabama. They played them a good game last year in Tuscaloosa. Unlike a lot of teams that Alabama plays that have employed the spread and trying to spread Alabama out over the field and hit them with big plays, this is going to be old school football. And now Alabama, while they still are a big physical team, they're not as big and physical as they used to be. Saban's had to adapt defensively to play against all these spread teams. Do you think Arkansas feels like offensively, maybe with that huge offensive line, that they have an advantage and maybe they can just pound Alabama between the tackles and make some plays?
Well, they're not as big as they were last year. I mean, Louisiana Tech's offensive line outweighed them. They've had a change out at one position since the opener. Colton Jackson, who was a redshirt freshman, weighed about 305 or so, has been replaced by Brian Wallace, who's about a 330-something guy. So they're a little bit heavier, but no, to think that they could just pound the town Alabama and make hay out of it, the numbers don't say that from recent games.
Right.
Look, they've had 3 shots to beat Nick Saban. The first year when Houston Nutt was still here was an epic game when Arkansas came back from 3 touchdowns behind and took the lead. And Saban did what I thought was a brilliant move. He kicked a long field goal late in the game to pull within 4. He did that first instead of going on 4th down.
That's
and
right.
then came back and got the touchdown when the clock unbelievably did not stop and they were short of first down on about the 9-yard line. But then in 2010, Arkansas fans would say that Ryan Mallett got kind of nervous, threw 3 interceptions in that game. It was a 24-20, I think, final. But Arkansas kind of had the early momentum in that game. I think we're leading 20-7 at one point, and Alabama just did what it does and got turnovers in the second half and went and won the game. And then, 14-13 here in 2014. Cody Walker, seemingly about to go across the goal line, traded Pete Dupree, hits it from behind, fumbles through the end zone, just a backbreaker. And then they dropped an interception in the end zone in that game and also dropped another interception. So if they play the style of last year's game where they were leading 7-3 at halftime, just kind of taking a little bit of control of the clock and limiting Alabama on the ground, which is one thing they've done a pretty good job of, just not getting totally gashed by Alabama on the ground, then they might have a chance. But I think they'll have to win the turnover battle by a couple, 3, or maybe have some breaks like they did with those fumbles in the 2014 game on punts up here. But otherwise, if it just plays out in chalk, I think Alabama's got too many advantages.
Tom Murphy, Arkansas Razorbacks beat reporter for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, our guest here on the Bud Light Hotline presented by Adams Beverages. All right, when you look at Alabama, Hugh Freeze likes to call them the gold standard of college football. Now, clearly, to get to Atlanta, you just can't beat Alabama. Ole Miss has proven that. They did it 2 years in a row. Alabama made it to the SEC championship game each time. But there's no doubt that the Tide is the barometer when you're in the SEC. You look at this Arkansas program, the improvement that they've made, where they're at now as opposed to where they were, when Bielema got to Arkansas, how he's rebuilt the team in his image. But how big is this game just from the standpoint of if you're ever going to get to where Alabama is, you probably at some point have to beat them. Is that the way the fans up there view it? You want to win them all. I understand that. Like I said, whether it's A&M, whether it's Tennessee, whether it's LSU, but how big is this one game for the psyche of the Arkansas people if they can knock off Alabama to say, hey, we've arrived?
Well, Brett Bielema has said this himself. He feels like that his program has not arrived until he beats Alabama. And it hasn't happened in the previous 3 meetings. Had a good shot in 14, did not get it done. They've got a few signature wins, 2 in a row over LSU, 2 in a row over Ole Miss,
right,
in years that Ole Miss has beaten Alabama. So put it down on paper, and there's a way that you can come up come up with a scenario that you can beat Alabama. It just hasn't been done. Now, I felt like Saban pretty well owned Petrino. I think they just knew their route trees. They didn't really blitz a whole lot. They just covered and got the pressure on quarterbacks, and they just kind of had Petrino's number. This style, a little different, obviously. More like Alabama, just kind of more like an Alabama light, you know. I think they've adapted pretty well with Dan Enos as offensive coordinator. They're a much better pass team than they were a couple 3 years ago. So that gives them a little added dimension. Bootlegs, the play action stuff they throw to their tight ends, some crossing stuff to their receivers has helped. They like to run in around. I think there's a way that they can beat Alabama, and just a lot of things have to go in their favor. It would be a monumental win. They're obviously behind the 8 ball with a loss to A&M, so in the division already. So they'd have to have some things break their way the rest of the season, and tough games loom with Ole Miss and Auburn the next 2 weeks. But to load up and get one victory over Alabama would certainly be a seminal moment for the Bielema era here.
All right, I want to ask you about the fullback, Hayden Johnson, getting arrested in between Saturday night and Sunday morning on public intoxication and minor in possession of alcohol charges. Do you know his status yet? Do you expect Bielema to address that as far as the game against Alabama?
Oh, yeah, he'll definitely talk about it today. And, you know, if Trent holds, he'll probably get a one-game suspension. I don't know, like, there's different circumstances. He wasn't driving a car. So it could be, you know, that he goes a little bit lighter on the kid who, based on the police report, seemed to be pretty intoxicated. So Brett's been a pretty good disciplinarian here, and so we're going to probably find that out in about 2 hours, what he's going to do with the Hayden Johnson situation.
All right, now I want to get to Bielema and what it's like covering this guy. Of course, obviously you covered Saban a little while. You covered Mike Shula. I've covered Saban. I think he's fair with the media. He's consistent, but it's nothing warm and fuzzy. You know that. Bielema seems to be a guy that's just a ton of fun for everybody, for the players, for the fans, and even for the media. Not that he's not all serious about winning, but is he as fun to cover from the outside, from the inside as it is from the outside looking in, just watching him operate? Do you have a big time and enjoy working with this guy?
Yeah, he's a big garrulous, fun guy, man. Just gregarious, and the thing about him, he's a quote machine, but his quotes aren't real clean and crisp. They kind of go off in different directions sometimes. But one thing you do know about him, if there's something going on and it speaks to him and his character or his team, he's going to say something about it. Let's go back to the Cliff Kingsbury issue from last year. You know, he didn't know, he wasn't aware. He'd already had his post-game press conference when Kingsbury delivered the, can you say this word on your radio network?
Go ahead.
Well, okay. Well, with Cliff Kingsbury just said we just kicked his ass.
Yeah, you can say that
probably
word.
Get their ass kicked next week. Okay. He wasn't aware of that, but on Monday he was ready to go, man, and started talking about, well, you know, I'm responding to a guy who's got a 500 record, and just stuff like that. He's not going to let it go.
No.
So we enjoy it. He has some things he really stands up for, player safety issues. He puts it out there when his guys like don't show up for a weight lift or are late for a meeting. I mean, he just puts it out there. But he's a positive guy in terms that he doesn't call guys out typically for, you know, big mess ups in games, like whose fault was it on this sack or something like that. And so I enjoy covering him. There's not a whole lot of fretting about will he say something on this or not. He usually does, and I respect him for that.
You know, there are a lot of coaches in the West Division that are probably saying to themselves, man, if I could just get in the East, we'd be in Atlanta, you know. No Alabama to deal with, and you know, I think it's being played out again this season. The East is still just a much weaker division than the West. And where's the outcry? You know, basketball coaches cried about it a few years ago. They took away the divisions. You know, no talking football. But let's talk about Bielema before I turn you loose. In getting to Atlanta, do you think the Arkansas people feel like he's the guy that he can get them over the hump and win an SEC championship?
Well, there's always going to be a small segment or a segment of your fan base who wants it done a different way, and they see all these other teams doing spreads and stuff like that, and It's exciting. It's a good brand of football. But Bielema just does it his way, and I think he's got a good, strong backing of people. And this year, I think they probably had enough on the defensive line to think that they're a contender, but they're still lacking in depth at linebacker a little bit and at safety. And so if they go without injuries and stuff, well, then you think they can hang in this thing all year. Even if they lose to Bama, they could still kind of be in a lot of the games the rest of the way and things like that. But their cover's not as stocked as some of their opponents in the SEC West. So they have to hit upon certain things like having a really good quarterback. Well, they feel like they have that. A dominating offensive line. It's not there right now. 2 or 3 really good running backs. Well, they're probably in the process of getting that with Raleigh Williams and Dev Whaley, and with Cody Walker as a third, pounded back, but they're not quite there. Good receiving core, yeah. Tight ends, yeah. And like I mentioned, defensive front, they're pretty deep. But there's just enough issues right now, the special team, depth in the secondary, and things like that, quality across the front, offensive front, that I don't think you can identify them as a team that's going to stay in the hunt the whole way. They played to their strengths in a lot of the games, TCU games and stuff. They've done well. But I do think that there's the feel that there's been this steady build under Bielema, and if the right factors are in place, they could contend in the SEC West.
Finally, Tom, Alabama is playing a true freshman at quarterback, and he's been outstanding. Jalen Hurts to win the job in the first place was a big deal after Blake Barnett started the opener against Southern Cal. But against Kentucky in the first half was the first time I thought, you know what, he looked a little bit like a freshman. He missed some throws. He missed some open receivers. And he settled down in the second half. But I know you'll get into it more as the week goes on after you hear from Bielema and the defensive coordinator. But what do you think? Arkansas, you believe the game plan will be try to get to him, rattle him, force him into some mistakes?
I think so. I think they'd like to contain the run game kind of like they did some last year and make him beat them. And their defensive front is good enough that they might be able to get a little pressure on the guy. The problem they faced is quarterback draws, quarterback runs, that are called quarterback runs have hurt them, and just scramble plays. So we know Hurts can run as well, and that's probably going to be a part of Alabama's plan. Look, pocket collapses, go for it. So, but yeah, I've got to think that that's what their plan is going to be, is to try to cover well enough, slow the run game, and then make Hurts beat them through the air, and I think that's the best pathway for a victory.
I know that can be a really good home field advantage there in Fayetteville. It's a 6 o'clock game. I assume you expect the atmosphere to be pretty electric Saturday night. Yeah,
it's a sold-out game. It'll be stoked. Chance to be the number one, pretty rare. It doesn't happen a whole lot. I think the last time Arkansas did it was down at LSU in that 2007, that crazy 2007 season. Triple overtime game, and LSU went on to win the national championship. So Razorback fans will be fired up for this, for sure.
Thank you, Tom.
Bet you, Gary.